May the Force be with you.
Hey, what's up? It's Taylor Gray, the voice of Ezra Bridger from Star Wars Rebels, Spectre 6 transmitting to Ghost. I want to welcome you to Squad 224, brought to you by the Comic Collectors Guild. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you enjoy the podcast. I can't wait to check out the podcast myself. I've so enjoyed communicating with fans of the show, fans all across Star Wars. It's the greatest galaxy in the world, and everybody who's a part of it, from creators to cast to animators to post-production to fans, that's what makes Star Wars, and I feel so fortunate to be a part of it along with you. Thank you for being a part of this whole journey. Can't wait to check out the podcast. I hope everybody enjoys listening to it, and may the Force be with you always. Cheers.
And go.
Hey everyone, welcome to Squad 224, a Star Wars Fancast brought to you by the Comic Collectors Guild. I'm your host tonight. My name is Brandon, aka the Padawan of this group, and let me introduce you guys to the rest of the squad. I got Ian, aka Bearded Comic Guy.
What's up, everybody?
I got Jake, also known as the Superman.
What's up, everybody?
I got Mark, Mexican Reviews, with me tonight.
What up?
I got the Vice President LT at House of Geekery.
What up, kids?
And then I got Lee Lawson. I don't know his Instagram, but it'll be in the YouTube.
Lee Lawson.
What's going on, guys? That's me, just Lee.
And tonight we will be reviewing and talking about Episode 2, Attack of the Clone Wars, which is one of my favorites. So before we get into it, LT has a super cool collectible to show us tonight. LT, take it away.
Kicking off our Attack of the Clones podcast review is none other than a 12-inch Jango Fett deluxe figure, complete with all his accessories. I don't know if you can see a good picture of that without reflection. Complete suit of armor, 2 flight packs. Check out his holster with his guns. It even comes with a little Camino dart that he shoots at what's-her-face at the... I forgot her name. Zam Wessel, yeah. It comes in there. It's somewhere in there, but this is a good piece. It's got, like I said, all these accessories. Came with a part of the. It was part of a set that had Anakin, Obi, and a Stormtrooper, but this was the only one to get. Right now, you can find them on eBay upwards to $100, $150. So, if you want one, you got to fork over the cash.
Breaking my heart.
All right. This is from 2002, I believe. Yeah, 2002. Unopened, like all my figures.
That's awesome, LT. Thank you for sharing. That's awesome. Not going to be buying it, though. I don't want to hurt my wallet that much. But
What wallet? Do you even have a wallet?
I do. It's a Black Panther wallet.
Oh, bro.
Put it up cash in your pocket.
All right. Anyway, let's get into this movie. Let's get into some of our initial thoughts of the movie. So, Ian, what were some of your initial thoughts of this?
I enjoy this because we get the roots of the Fets, we get Jango and Lil Boba, get to see all the Jedis going crazy in the Gladiator arena. So it's cool to see all of them fighting together. It's enjoyable. You get to see kind of Annie's little turn to the dark side when he goes to find his mother and all of that. So still one of my enjoyable movies to watch, even though it's not one of my favorites out of the series.
Right. Jake, what are your first thoughts of it?
It was pretty refreshing. I actually hadn't watched it in a while. Going into it, it's definitely one of my least favorite of the Star Wars movies, but it was a little better than I remember. I think it's a movie that, the highs are very high and the lows are very low. There's a lot of back and forth between the two. Has some of the standout scenes in the Star Wars saga that I really enjoyed. Mainly the Gladiator pit with all the Jedi. Who doesn't love seeing, tons of Jedi light up their lightsabers and go into battle? Anytime you get a little Samuel L. Jackson in there doing some action, that's always cool to see. And seeing the Fets, you get a little bit of the hint of what's coming with Darth Vader, with Anakin, with the Raiders. So that was really cool. Definitely, we'll get into the lows and the highs other than that. But overall, still an enjoyable movie. It's Star Wars, and it's set up quite nicely the very next film.
Right. Yeah, we did get to see a lot of Anakin in there. Him turn into the dark, so it was great foreshadowing with that. Mark, how'd you like it?
Mine's going to be a little bit more condensed. I love the characters, love the story. I hate the dialogue.
Yeah, the dialogue is really boring.
Well
Lee,
said.
how about you? How about you, Lee?
Oh, well, for me, it's actually, I'm glad that we're actually going back and watching these films because it's given me a different perspective on them. I'm really enjoying them more than I thought I would. Starting with the Phantom Menace last week that we reviewed and talked about. And so this one was also great, much better than I remembered. I love what I'm starting to notice with these is the big action sequences that they're taking off with both the Phantom Menace and Attack of the Clones, which is like right off the bat, which is different than the original, 4, 5, and 6. They didn't really kick off with the action right away. There was a lot of putting in stuff into place. But this one, within the first 10 minutes, we've got these fantastic action sequences that both kick off. So that was great to see that in the very beginning. Jar Jar is ushered out a little bit. I love it. It's actually even Padme. He's going over in one of his long-winded things, I guess, as they're saying their goodbyes. And she's like, well, I think you got a lot to do, so I'm gonna let you go now. I think she's speaking for the audience at that point, She's like, I'm sure you've got a lot. Please, let's just. I bid you
just go
adieu.
for it.
Yeah,
do it. Do
it. So I really it was funny to see that again and to kind of really see, I wonder if that was kind of speaking for the audience.
Right.
But one of the things that didn't really change. So again, lots of highs that I thought it was much better than I remembered. One thing that didn't change for me, and we can get into it, is just Hayden Christensen. I'm watching him in the role, and there are times where I'm like, is he playing a zombie? He's just very monotone in his dialogue, and then he's very monotone, and then all of a sudden he goes into a petulant child, at some points with his dialogue. He sounds like he's a 8-year-old pitching a fit, It's Obi-Wan's fault. I know it is,
And then Padme's like, hey, Annie, you've grown up.
Yeah, I know.
No, you haven't.
But all in all, I thought it was great. It was really fun to watch and get into again.
Right. How about you, LT?
Well, episode 2 was a welcome change from part 1. I dug the whole Geonosis battle, arena. I was really loving the first time we get to see Yoda just kick some ass lightsaber wise. I mean, the little flip and flee tricks he's doing all over the place at the end against Dooku. For the most part, it was very much more enjoyable than part 1. And like Lee said, less Jar Jar, but in place of that, we got more Anakin and his being a baby about everything, and that's what kind of I didn't like. It was a welcome turn to see him at times be dark, and what he's thinking. But overall, it was an enjoyable movie, a lot better than part 1.
Right.
Not one of my favorites of the trilogy, of the prequel trilogy, but good nonetheless.
Right. For me, I guess like Lee said, I really enjoy going back and rewatching it. It gives me a whole different perspective of these movies, because when we're just watching it for just to enjoy, just sit down and watch a movie, it's different than actually watching it for these podcasts where we're critically thinking about everything in the movie. It's like, okay, this is connected to this is connected to that. So it's kind of like more enjoyable finding all these Easter eggs. And then at the same time, it's less enjoyable because we're also looking at what they didn't do, right? Because it's like kind of frustrating. Like we've all said, or like you guys have all said about Anakin kind of being a little baby. that was one of my things about the movie that I didn't like as well. But I guess my favorite part was seeing the Jedi fight the battle droids. That was my favorite part. And then the clones came in. So that's what I really liked. My other initial thoughts, of course, Natalie Portman being in it. I love Natalie Portman. So I really
I'm
enjoyed
down.
that. So, but there are definitely things that this movie lacked in. So like the whole middle part, like the whole climax was a little boring. That's my first thoughts. So let's go in. What were the biggest strengths and who was the standout character? Ian, let's take it away with you first.
I'll first start with Obi-Wan. That part where he goes to Kamino and figures out about the clones and tries to tiptoe around. That whole sequence I thought was probably some of the best in the movie. And trying to not spoil anything with Django, and then he sees the armor and he figures it out. I think that was really exciting. And then again, the whole sequence, and LT said the planet name, and I don't want to butcher it again.
Geonosis.
Geonosis.
Yeah. I mean, how that got set up in that battle, and I remember watching it as a kid, and that I got so hyped, and I watched it again this morning, and I got exactly as hyped that came on, and it is cool, and then Yoda with Dooku, Dooku goes and defeats Obi-Wan and Anakin. Anakin gets his arm cut off, and then Yoda just strolls in there with his pimp cane and is just so awesome when he starts fighting him. I loved it. It was definitely my strong points for the movie.
How about you, Jake?
For me, as far as standouts for the movie, the strengths, not to copy Ian, but the whole Camino, Obi-Wan going over there to figure out the Clone Wars, especially now, going back knowing that, we have the Clone Wars show, and it's really cool just to go kind of the origins of how they were found and how they were built. So that was really cool. Again, the Gladiator pit, seeing all the Jedi was obviously a standout for everybody. Yoda, of course, we've been waiting for so many years from the original trilogy to see, what's this guy really made of? Like, what's this guy about? To see him in combat was really, really cool. Something different that I had completely forgot about until rewatching this that I thought was really interesting and I thought was cool is when Obi-Wan's kind of trapped and he's in handcuffs, freaking Dooku spills the beans on the whole plan and he doesn't believe him. Like, he lives like, hey, there's Darth Sidious. They're going to, he's leading the whole thing. He's going to, and Obi-Wan, I was like, man, that's so like kind of cool that this dude just spills the beans. He's like, nope, that's not true. And it's just, that's that.
Right,
so that was really cool. But a standout character for me is Padme. She's incredible actress and beautiful to look at, but also she's like literally, her back must have been really sore after some of those scenes with Anakin because she was definitely carrying the acting weight in some of those. So she definitely was standout as far as the actors for me.
Right. Now you bring up an interesting point with the whole Dooku and Obi-Wan scene, because to me that was also one of my biggest things is Obi-Wan's denial, because he's held on to that throughout the Clone Wars.
Yeah.
And it's like why didn't he bring up to see, like, go more into the Chancellor right after that instead of 20 years, or not 20 years after, like however many years after,
Yeah, and for me, it's just like, too, like, you find out going into it, Dooku trained Qui-Gon, so you got this huge character, like, oh, well, like, this is the dude that is giving him all, so obviously he's got Jedi tie. I believe he was a Padawan of Yoda, if I'm not mistaken, so just a very intriguing
Wasn't
character.
he the Padawan of Sifo Dyas?
One of the, I could have swore it was Yoda. I think it was Yoda.
Yoda said Padawan.
In the movie.
Yeah. So this guy in between, and he's really, he's got the Sith lightsaber, but he's not like all the way Sith. So I found him very intriguing, even in that little dialogue, saying like, hey, we need to destroy the Sith. And here he is dueling a Sith lightsaber. So I thought that was pretty cool.
Right on. Mark, what'd you think? Or what'd you think about the biggest strengths?
Biggest strengths, like you were saying, some of the Easter eggs in here are pretty spot on. And there was one that I didn't catch until last night. Obi-Wan sends the message to Anakin while he's on Tatooine, and R2 and C-3PO come out to let him know, and he says it looks like he's carrying a message from an Obi-Wan Kenobi. Does that name meaning anything to you? Which is like a direct callback to A New Hope when he says it to Luke. So I thought that was pretty cool. And then there's another Easter egg that is pretty cool. If you look at Anakin's lightsaber from this, it is a similar version to Darth Vader's. It looks almost identical. There's a couple other changes, like the emitter is silver instead of black. So I love the Easter eggs that they're dropping. I'll agree with Ian and Jake. The Camino stuff and all the Obi-Wan stuff was amazing. That's one of my favorite action pieces from the movie is the Jango and Obi-Wan fight on one of on the landing pad, and then getting introduced to the clones. That's all fantastic too, because if you're a fan of the Clone Wars, this is where it starts, and you get introduced to these amazing characters.
Right.
But yeah,
that's where my generation of Star Wars comes in, is the Clone
Yeah,
Wars. That TV show from when I was 7 or 8 to where I am today that was like my whole childhood. That's like my Star Wars. That's my generation of it. So
right.
This movie's definitely a homage to all that.
Definitely. And I really want to commend them on their sound design too. Like, one of my favorite sounds in all of Star Wars is from this movie, and it's when Jango drops the seismic charge, and the noise that thing makes is just so incredible. It's like, how did you do that? I love it.
Right. That's also something that's really overlooked in this movie is the graphics and the sound and everything put into that movie. Much better than The Phantom Menace. Lee, what'd you think? Lee, what were some of your standouts?
Oh, for me, a lot of you guys have already said a lot of the same things, but the strengths were it had a lot of moving parts to put into place, and I think it handled it fairly well. So I think they did a lot of the storytelling pretty well with that. But the character, as you guys all mentioned, was really Obi-Wan. We get to see him really be a full-fledged Jedi in this film. Before he was the Padawan in the first one. So here, I mean, and he's right off the bat, right, different than other Jedi even, I think, because as soon as Padme's trying to get assassinated the first time, I mean, he's right out the window, bam, right after that, right after them. So he's right on it. He's just a different type of character, different. It was fun to see Obi-Wan be this guy that we'd always heard about or heard legends about, being from the first trilogy as I was. So that was awesome. You guys mentioned Yoda. That was really cool. I think was also, which I'd forgotten about, is the Death Star is actually introduced in this film. Also, when they mentioned it there at the end, they're like, oh, if they found out, I can't find out about the weapon that we're building or whatever. So that's kind of awesome that they're planting that seed there. I had totally forgotten about that until I rewatched it. So that was good stuff. As a whole, like I said, I just have a better appreciation for the film.
Right. I totally agree. LT, I'm kind of curious of what you have to say, because you saw 4, 5, and 6 in the theaters, and you also saw this in the theaters too. So I'm really interested to see why this is at the bottom of your list and what stood out to you.
Like most of y'all said, Obi-Wan was the main focus, almost a little bit more than Anakin was. I mean, right off the bat, you see Obi-Wan with Anakin, and just like talking to him, like when they're going up the lift to go see Padme, he makes a little snark remark, and Obi-Wan's quick to remind him of his position, or who he is. He's being that teacher. Yeah, and he seemed a lot more strict than Qui-Gon was in the first one, and that's what's good, because he really wants to fulfill Qui-Gon's wish of training Anakin. On top of that, you get to see Obi-Wan really dig into everything and investigate what's going on behind the scenes. start digging up dirt on on Dooku, and then he goes to Camino and digging up more dirt on everything, and I just love the whole battle scene between him and Django, and then I guess the whole battle scene at the end too when he's in the pit. But to see Obi-Wan that young, that versatile in everything he does was something that we didn't get to see in A New Hope because he was already old. He was already
Dead,
dead. Yeah.
more or less.
So it was refreshing to see him as a young, spry Jedi,
Looking like Jedi Jesus.
Yeah. So in that sense, he was the strongest character of the movie, I think. Way more than Anakin, which technically this trilogy is supposed to be about the rise of Darth Vader, but
Right.
I give it all to Obi-Wan.
Right. My favorite part of this movie was what spins out of it. Because like I said, I have more of a connection to the clones because that's what I grew up on. That was the Star Wars that my generation was talking about. Like Jake, you guys, when you were growing up, obviously you're probably talking about the prequels and all that. Ian, you too, with like Darth Maul coming in. For me, it was the Clone Wars. It was like, whoa, did you see the latest episode of the Clone Wars? And it was like, it was all that. So seeing like I posted in the group chat today of Barriss Offee being in the background
Saw that.
during the Battle of Geonosis. Nadar Veb was right there with Kit Fisto. Obviously he dies by the hands of Grievous. So just seeing all those like little Easter eggs that came into the Clone Wars was just so cool to me because that's what I was like waiting episode to episode on. For the biggest character, I have to go and say Anakin again because it was kind of like we're seeing him mature but not mature. We're seeing him age but not necessarily maturing. He's just taking his negative energy out and he's just lashing out because of his attachment that we talked about in episode 1. So I guess that was kind of seeing how he handles struggle was the biggest thing that stood out to me. It was because in episode 3 he couldn't handle that struggle when it came down to dealing with the council because he was never taught how to handle struggle in episode 2.
Right.
So let's go in. What were some of the flaws in this movie? There were a lot of them. Ian, what was your biggest flaw or some of your biggest flaws?
I mean, Anakin. He's just so whiny.
Hayden Christensen grill begin.
Yeah, he's. There was a scene where he was just like, "It's just not fair." It's like, yeah, you think, man? But just his like attempt at flirting with Padme was god awful.
Oh my god, it was creepy.
Yeah, like
Definitely
it was so bad. He was just whiny. It's just like I think you guys hit on it last week, where it was just like,
Guys, my special guest Obi-Wan.
Obi-Wan Kenobi. What's up,
Speaking
buddy?
of Obi-Wan,
He heard his name. He came
Like,
out.
I was gonna say,
as soon as I said Obi-Wan, he was all like, "What? Hello." He's got the color of the beard going on and everything.
Yeah. It's waiting for go. Hello there.
And when he gets
Wait.
old, he'll start having the gray.
There you go.
yeah.
Sorry, Ian.
No, you're fine. Yeah, just his whiny, just all his dialogue. I didn't like it. And then there was also a scene in the beginning of the movie where he was kind of arguing with Obi-Wan on the couch in front of Padme and all that. And just like, dude, shut up. Like,
Right.
stop talking.
Disrespect.
Yeah, and it's just like that kind of set the tone. And and that's where the fact that we know that he becomes Vader is just like, how is this whiny brat just so devious and all of that? And
This is the chosen one.
yeah, it's crazy.
It almost makes you glad that he had to go on a respirator because I can't imagine.
Yeah.
I can't
Oh, no.
imagine what Anakin would have been like in A New Hope if he was
Yeah.
like, "No, Luke, no, Luke."
It's not fair, Luke. You have a sister. No one told me about that.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
Yeah, but I mean that's where all in mind is, and that's my biggest complaint about this movie.
Right. While Anakin was a strength in this movie for me, he's also a big weakness in like a whole solid 30 minutes. Every minute he was on Tatooine and Naboo, that was like a whole weakness for me. What about you, Jake?
I mean, not to beat a dead horse, but we're just gonna keep rolling with this thing. I mean, part of it I think is the writing in the actual script is very, very weak. I don't know if I can put all the blame on Hayden Christensen. You know, the writing's pretty bad and the dialogue for him. But that being said, to Ian's point, you know, when you're thinking about that this guy is going to be Darth Vader, you're like, there's no way. Like, there's other than the quick scene with the Tusken Raiders, which they do pull off very well, and you see, okay, he does have some acting talent there. Like, he's showing how he should be. You know, it's just, you're like, it just doesn't believe, it's not believable that it's, you know, that's the guy who's going to be Darth Vader. Part of it too is, to me, I mean, especially watching the Clone Wars, like, not to go back to that, but the way they portray Anakin is that in that show is so perfect. And it's true. It's like, okay, this guy was a hero. He was the best the Jedi had. He was the most talented. He's got his head on. He's not annoying. And he turns. Like, it is what it is. But in the live action features, I mean, I've said it, I think, since the last Jedi. Adam Driver plays a better Anakin Skywalker than Hayden Christensen. Like, that's who I thought Anakin would be like, is how Kylo was portrayed. But on top of just the acting, for me, the Padme Anakin just didn't make sense. I mean, she's a very smart politician. She's, you know, got so many qualities, and just his personality and hers literally are just don't match. Like, he's literally like a little kid, and she's this established politician. She's got her head on her shoulders. She's smart, and he's just like, whine. I hate sand, blah, blah, blah. And it's like,
Right.
why the hell would she like him? And then,
Like,
you know, it just was really awkward. Like, she knew him when he was like 7, and he's like, all of a sudden now they're interested. Like, it's a little Game of Thronesy. It just didn't work as far as like a love story. And I get that's the concept they're going for, but it just didn't work for me. So for me, the love relationship, and then the just the lack of, there's just no Vader in him yet. He's just a little twit. So yeah.
What about you, Mark?
Yeah, to piggyback off of what Jake was saying, yeah, Matt Lantern did incredible work with Anakin in the Clone Wars.
Yep.
That's definitely how he did him justice in the series. And then, you know, like you were saying with the dialogue and the writing, I think it all comes down to that. And I don't like hating on him, but it's George Lucas's inability to direct. He's the maker. He wrote the story. He wrote the dialogue for the prequels and everything, and it just falls so flat. Doesn't make sense. It's like, why did you write this super menacing character and then turn him into this little brat? And it's his inability to direct Hayden and give him guidance and, you know, tell him like, that was not what we're looking for. And he just kind of put the camera on him and let him do his thing. And I think if there would have been a better director, because, you know, Adam Driver, he's a better actor. I'm not saying that Hayden Christensen is a bad actor. He is bad in these movies, but that's because he did not have the direction he needed, like JJ gave to Adam. So my biggest weaknesses for this movie is George Lucas.
There you go.
That's a bold statement, but it
like
makes
it.
sense. I see your point. I totally
George
see
Lucas has even said that his weakness is dialogue. He said like, I'm not good at
Well,
it.
even if you go, the thing about the original trilogy is that he only directed Star Wars: A New Hope, and his directions every time he wanted something reshot was faster, more intense. He didn't actually go up to the actors and tell them what he was looking for, or tell them how he thinks they could have done it better, or anything like that. he just put the cameras on him and let it go. And that's what he did with this. And that's why Natalie's so good, because she's super talented. She's been in movies before, and this is like Hayden's jumping off point.
Right.
And I definitely think he gets better. Did get better as his career went on, but his inability to direct Hayden in his first role and say, this is what you should be doing, this is what I think, Anakin would be like, or you need to do a better delivery of this thing. He just put the camera on him and let it go. So
Was this Hayden's first role ever?
first mainstream
Major,
like,
yeah.
Like first starring role.
Yeah.
It was his first. Yeah, he had been on some TV show before seasons, but this was his first big time.
Just talking about Hayden, have you seen Looper?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was a good movie, but
really
if
good.
you really look at his acting, it reminded you a lot of how he acted in Star Wars.
I'm curious. This is something I've always asked. I'm just curious with you guys. Do you think if in both Phantom Menace and Attack of the Clones specifically, if they would have aged Anakin a little more, like we met him when he was, say, 12, not 8, and then the second one he was more like 20, not 15, like, do you think that would have been a smarter route to go, considering?
I think for the Phantom Menace, yes, 100%. I mean, I think that was my big problem, as he was a little kid, you know what I mean, running around. I think I would have liked to have seen him introduced very much, almost, I mean, where he was at this point, you know what I mean, or 12 or 13 or something, I guess, a little older for sure. I don't think he was too terribly bad in this. I think it was, I don't think his age really made a difference in Attack of the Clones so much. I really think it came down to what Mark, explained really well, which was the directing and all of that for him. I think if he had a stronger director, somebody, that was able to had a strong hand, you know what I mean, for lack of a better term, he'd have done much better. That's just my opinion.
And Anakin was 9 in episode 1. Padme was 14. So there's a 10-year gap between 1 and 2. So it was 19 and 24. So I don't know.
Maybe he just looked 15. I don't
know. Lee, do you have any more flaws you want to point out?
Any more flaws? How else can I tear this movie apart?
Beat the dead horse. Go ahead.
No.
Here we go.
I know, right? I'm glad you asked. No, really, it's just, which, I mean, I'll pile on. I mean, I did have it. It's really a love story. Also, I mean, the acting, yes. And Jake, you hit on this, but the love story just didn't make any sense. They didn't show how they fell in love.
There's no chemistry.
At all,
No.
Yeah, but I mean, there's nothing except for, like you said, that there's that creepy, before they even go to Naboo, there's that really creepy scene with him in her bedroom. He's just like leering at her, like
she even says, "Stop looking at me like that."
How many times did she say that, though?
Like, what is going on?
Why? Because it makes me uncomfortable. Yeah, dude, it's creepy.
Yeah, and then when he's rubbing her on her back there at one point, when they're looking at the water, and he's just like glaring at her. And then the picnic, they didn't show me nothing that made me say these guys are, falling in love. Even if they say their acting didn't have chemistry, there was still nothing in the story that showed that. You know what I mean?
They kissed once, and Anakin is like, "It haunts me." Oh,
yeah.
The kiss you should never have given me.
What?
Damn, that's
George.
Really
jeez.
LT, what about you? Before Lee completely ruins the movie for everyone watching.
I wanted to jump on something that Lee said real quick. When he was, when they're looking over the water, this scene was very jarring because it was actually shot on a location, and it wasn't CG. Like, this is when we start to see George Lucas go crazy with CG.
Oh, that was one of mine.
Yeah. This scene where they're talking about sand and water and stuff like that. It's very jarring because it's all practical. They're on a location that's actual.
They're in Italy, I think.
Place, yeah, and the rest of the movie is just CG. So.
Yeah, that's what I was going to point out. This movie, the CG, there was just too damn much. I mean, granted, I liked that whole pit battle at the end, but it was too cartoony at times. Just like everything going, the lasers and then the lightsabers, and then people dying and whatever. It just
Yep.
there was too much CG.
That one scene that really stood out for me that was really bad CGI. I thought is when they were on their date, I guess, and he was riding the dinosaur thing and he fell
Uh,
off. Right there. That was like really.
I thought
That
it
whole
looked like a
scene
pig.
looked really cartoonish.
another thing besides the CG and besides the love story and besides Anakin being a little brat, was they didn't. I feel like they didn't do Django enough justice. He was not on that long. I mean, he was technically a major character, an intro to Boba, who we all love. I mean, look, I'm wearing Boba's shirt right now.
We all love the idea of Boba, not
Yeah,
so much his
exactly. And
execution.
he was this big, bounty hunter, and he just got snuffed out. I mean, granted by Mace Windu at the end, but still, I think they should have carried his story arc maybe to the next movie or something, just to, get to show how notorious a hunter he is. Granted, it was also a great fight between Obi-Wan, but yeah, I think he was taken care of too fast. I would have loved to have seen more of him.
Right. Segueing into my flaws, it kind of piggybacks off that. My biggest thing was the format of it, because this is the first time I really seen all the Jedi together, but I really didn't have any attachment. When this movie was made back in the 90s, I don't think they had any intention on diving deeper into the Clone Wars story at the time.
2002.
Or 2002, sorry. I didn't think they had any intention on diving deeper into the story. So when they started killing off Jedi, it was like, when I first saw it, I didn't care. Rewatching it, I care a little bit more because I have an attachment to the Jedi. We know what they're about in the Clone Wars. But in this, not so much. While there was a lot of boring aspects of the movie, like the love story, something they could have just taken out, given us a little bit more Django, a little bit more moment of Mace Windu, so that when we see him in the pit fighting, we know, okay, this guy is like the badass of the Jedi. This is the one Jedi you don't want to mess with. Or
Well,
even
he did kind of decapitate Django.
Yeah, but
Yeah, and no blood.
but it was like
just
no
clean, no blood at all.
There's no blood because it's a lightsaber.
Yeah, but it was like
cauterizes.
Yeah, but we didn't really have that
Okay.
backstory on Mace Windu before he did that. So there was like, okay, cool. That was
I
like
wish they
my
would have
initial
showed on
reaction.
his lightsaber handle where they wrote "bad mother effer" for Samuel
in
L.
Arabic.
Jackson on his lightsaber. Yeah.
Right.
Awesome.
Another flaw I had was we didn't really see Obi-Wan and Anakin together all that much. So we didn't, like, in The Phantom Menace, Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan were together. So we could see Qui-Gon actively learning, or not Qui-Gon, Obi-Wan actively learning from Qui-Gon. You know, even in the battles, we didn't really see that a whole lot. We saw it with them chasing a bounty hunter, not really on an actual mission, not like actually in the field. It was like kind of a home mission that they ended up being separated in the end because Anakin jumped off. So that to me was the biggest flaw.
I kind of contribute that to them trying to start his transition to the dark side. Like his transition started happening when he was away from his father figure or his brother Obi-Wan. So they kind of got to get that in there, and I agree. But then we got the Clone Wars in there together a ton.
Yeah, that's why I like this movie a lot more, is because of the Clone Wars. So the Clone Wars answers everything. We get like Ki-Adi-Mundi, we get Luminara, we get all these other Jedi that we get a deeper understanding of, even Anakin and Obi-Wan and their relationship that was mentioned throughout the prequels. But we never really got to see it as much, like on an introspective look. We never really got to see it in this movie in particular of their relationship when they're together. Actually in the field together, not still on Coruscant.
Yeah. And one thing that stinks, like I said, is, throughout this, you go back to Obi-Wan in the original trilogy, and he's talking about, how important of a Jedi Knight that Anakin was, and that he's this big hero and blah, blah. Between the three movies that they show, you don't even get to see him do anything heroic. Like, he doesn't do anything. Like, Obi-Wan bails him out a bunch of times. You get,
Yoda bailed him out.
Yeah, Yoda bails him out. I mean, there's nothing where you would say that guy's out of the ordinary. In fact, you would think he would be subpar to Mace, he's subpar to Yoda, he's subpar to Obi-Wan, he's subpar to, all these characters. Like, dude, you're supposed to portray him like this dude is on a whole nother level than everybody else, which the Clone Wars does all the time. And, they reference like, oh, I saved your neck like 9 times or 10 times, but they don't show anything. So I think that was one thing they didn't execute at all, was showing how important he was to the Rebel Alliance. I'm sorry, the Jedi in the Republic before he turns and becomes the Sith Lord. Because if you would have went off the movies, you'd be like, oh, well, that dude's going to lose when he becomes Darth Vader because he's not as good as these other guys.
Yeah,
Right.
The New Hope, he's telling Luke how he was the best starfighter or something like that he'd ever seen.
We didn't see that.
We kind of got that at the beginning of episode 3.
Yeah, and then part 3, you get to see that minute battle where he's zipping around, but
you kind of, it's not he's not starfighting or anything in episode 1, but he's pod racing. He's the only human that's ever done it, and then he takes down the command ship
off of luck. Yeah, but. Yeah, I guess that was some of my biggest flaws too. Is like just cut some of the Tatooine scenes, expand more on the Jedi, because this is the first time we're seeing them all together. We're not really getting a whole lot. It's like when that one Jedi, I can't even remember his name, but he jumped up and just got shot 3 times by Jango. Like, it's like these Jedi are supposed to be keepers of the peace, but he jumps in and gets shot, and it's like, if there were so many Jedi there and they can't defeat a bunch of robots, how? That was like my biggest miss. Like, they'd have clones that they don't even know come in and bail them out of this fight. And we saw like a shit ton of Jedi appear. And by the time the battle was over, half of them was there. I was like, okay then.
A side note to all those Jedi, it wasn't supposedly NSYNC or one of those boy bands supposed to be like mixed in there as Jedi. Or is that just me? No, I think it was. They cameoed as Jedi in that mix scene.
It very well could be. They do these secret cameos.
Just watching
Boys,
Infinity
NSYNC,
War.
one of those. They were as Jedis, but in the mass of everyone.
Right. So I want to hear your thoughts about this. How does this impact the Skywalker saga? How does this impact like the Skywalker legacy? Ian, you can go first.
So, I guess with the Skywalker, to me, this one is the only thing that really impacts is the Tusken Raiders scene, and that's kind of like the first like real hint of Anakin going to the dark side, and but then you get Anakin and Padme's like love, whatever. Whatever you call what happened in that movie. But obviously that's going to affect the Skywalker saga. How's that at that?
What about you, Jake?
Yeah, on a positive note, the impact, I think it's just the beginning of the turn. You're starting to see like the glimpses of like this is his solitude away from Obi-Wan in the decisions he makes, the wheels start to turn on his fall into the darkness. So that's probably the biggest impact.
What about you, Mark?
Another good impact is we get to see the beginning of the Clone Wars that gets mentioned by Obi-Wan in A New Hope, the Clone Wars. You're like, okay, what's that? And now we're getting to see the start of it. So.
Yeah. I guess we're all on the same page today. What about you, Lee?
No, I'll just say exactly what everybody else said. It's a fairly large impact. It affects everything that you guys said. It sets him on his path to become Vader. It's as far as a movie it's not high on our list. I would say we all agree that as far as like the impact on what it does to the family line, I think it's a lot of seeds are planted here.
Right. LT, do you have anything different, or are you just going to say the same thing?
Right. As a story-wise, you don't really see anything besides him, his little glimpses into the dark side. But as far as Skywalker family saga, I believe you see more Obi-Wan as a character, and how badass he is. Um, Again, it's a center story of a trilogy, so everything, of course, comes to head on in part three. So as far as it focusing or helping the Skywalker story down the road, it really wasn't. It wasn't really that much. I don't think.
Yeah, I was hoping someone would say that. As a Skywalker, I don't see much connection between like the power he's supposed to have. Like we all said that. So when you're talking about the Skywalker bloodline, it's supposed to be the most powerful bloodline out there. I never got that vibe. Never did. So
No.
when it says something about, so when we want to talk about what does this have to do with his legacy, not a damn thing. Because we see it all in number 3. We see everything in number 3. If you did not watch number 2, you could have, and you just went 1, 3, you could have easily just picked up on what Skywalker did power-wise. If you want to see how his relationship with Padme kicked off, yes, fine. This is there, but I didn't see anything that made him Anakin Skywalker, that made him the chosen one, the one that Qui-Gon wanted to turn into a Jedi. I never got that.
But see, as terribly executed as this was, which we all agree it was, I still think that this is what it was supposed to be, is, to your point, the beginning of their love story, which is, without that love story, I think that was just one of the contributions that leads him to Vader, right? So without that, maybe, because it needed to be a perfect puzzle for it to all happen, right? He needed to fall in love, which you're not supposed to do. And, all of these other things, he didn't have a father figure and all of that. So I think that's why I say that, that I do feel like it does, even though it was terribly executed, that's why I think it has a holds an important place.
So here's my question to you, Lee. This is my question to you. When Palpatine originally put Obi-Wan and Anakin on that assignment, do you think he did that purposefully, kicking off their relationship?
I think that, I really honestly think that this man had such an intricately well planned. I think that he knew that there was a thing there, and he knew that them falling in love. I mean, I think he even probably knew that, well, no, he didn't know about the children, I guess. But no, I think that was part of his plan. I think this was an intricately well planned with Palpatine's, that I think that was just one piece of the puzzle that needed to happen.
Well, there's reference.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. Oh no, I was just saying.
It plants a seed for the turn too, because Anakin has an inability to let go of his attachments because he was brought up by his mom. She passes away, which leads to his fear of losing Padme in Episode 3.
Yeah, and then Palpatine giving him that line, even helping those not die, or which he tries to do with Padme.
Yeah, one thing, I think a line they say in Episode 3 that probably touches home with how, I think Palpatine definitely did know is, you hear him say, do you remember when you told me about your mother? So it kind of represents that he has talked privately with Palpatine, throughout the years, and opens up about him. So, he's very open with Obi-Wan about, how he kind of feels about Padme. So he's kind of obsessed before he even sees her. So, I would definitely think he knows. And your point, Lee, one thing it kind of is funny. I mean, it's integral with the love story, but another thing that hasn't really been brought up is, because it's only 3 movies and he's 8 in one of them, or 7 or 9, whatever his age is, the love story is so short and rushed. It's literally like they meet again, they fall in love, she gets knocked up, they die. Like within in movie time, about 2 hours, 2.5 hours. It's just like, wait, what's all this middle? Like, what, and obviously the Clone Wars completely cleans it up and does it right, but movie wise, that's a big kind of hole there. It's just like it happens so fast. It's just, they meet, she's knocked up, she's dead, and it's just like, okay.
Right. I definitely think Palpatine put that relationship in motion by signing them in the first place, because he knew how Anakin felt when he wanted to say goodbye to her when he was 8, when she was about to give the motion in the Senate, or when she went away. So that was one of my biggest things that I talked to my friends about a lot is how Palpatine played that father figure role. When Anakin was distant from Obi-Wan, he had Palpatine, who completely took advantage of that. So that's like one of the underlying things of Attack of the Clones and even Phantom Menace. That's just so slept on is Palpatine in this whole thing, because he's the big baddie of the original trilogy.
Right.
Apparently, he's the big bad of the
All of
entire
them.
saga.
He's the big bad.
All 9.
All of a sudden in episode 9, oh yeah, forgot about that guy. Here he is.
There you
But-
go.
And here's my granddaughter.
Spoiler, LT.
Not until episode 9 of our podcast. All right.
All right, so where does this rank on your guys' Star Wars list? We're going out of 11, right, including Solo and Rogue One.
Correct.
Okay.
So Ian, where does this rank?
I want to say I put 1 at 9, so this is going to go 10.
10 for me as well.
Mark?
I believe I have it at 9.
Lee?
I believe I also have it at 10.
Okay, then.
I
What
would
about
say, I would say 10. It's 1 better than episode 1, but not as strong as anything else. So I'd say
Yeah,
10.
it's my number 10, but it's my least favorite. I know it makes no sense, and I'll explain it when we get to the one that's last, but it's my least favorite, even though it's 10. I'll spoil my own reasoning, but it's my least favorite, but it's ranked number
So
10.
it's stronger than 11, but weaker than 9.
Yes.
I'm gonna be the positive one as 6 because
Wow.
Wow.
I'm just going on. So I'm going off all the original trilogies in my top 5, and then Revenge of the Sith spoiling. I'm so sorry. And then I didn't like the new sequel. I didn't like the new sequel of everything, and I didn't like Solo. So those are like the bottom 4. So it leaves this in the middle.
Well, since you're
that's
so
just
spoily, I guess Solo is my least favorite, just because I didn't give a rat's about a Solo movie, and it's irrelevant to the rest of the story. So therefore, even
Have
though
you
it's
guys
a better
seen it
movie,
since it came out?
yes, twice.
Okay. I watched it again.
It's not a
recently.
bad movie. I never cared for a Han Solo movie. That's the reason why it's my least favorite. But it's not a bad film.
Right. Again, I just really liked what this led into, because when I first saw this, I was getting Clone Wars like 2-3 years later. So it again, it's what my generation talked about. So that was my reasoning. Anything else you guys want to say?
So as Squad 224, we've got the Phantom Menace at number 1 right now. Who thinks this is better than the Phantom Menace? Raise your hand. 1.
Damn.
So okay. So
LT,
our
you're gonna
official.
join me?
I will join.
No.
So two
I
to.
don't.
I think
Go
you
ahead.
think Attack of the Clones is better than Phantom Menace. Is that what you're
Yeah.
saying?
Yes, I'm asking you if you think Attack of the Clones is better than Phantom Menace.
Oh, Attack of the Clones better than Fal? Yeah. I thought it was the other way around.
LT, I knew you were gonna join me. Come on.
I was going to
Like
say,
it-
what? There's
Go
no
ahead.
Jar Jar in this movie.
There's 2 lines of Jar Jar.
Jar Jar.
So we need.
No.
So
this
here's
is,
the thing
this
we'll run
is-
into.
yes,
We need a tie
definitely.
break because it's 3-3.
Well, the comments will be our tiebreak.
There we go. I'm okay with that. We can get a comment or some comments going on. We'll update the list next week. Right now, Phantom Menace is still number 1, to be determined if Attack of the Clones.
I
is
tell you
better.
what, we're gonna do this right here. When this video drops, which is what day is this coming out?
Sunday.
Sunday.
Sunday. On Monday, I'm gonna post on my story on Instagram, Superman14JF. What movie did you like better, Phantom Menace or Attack of the Clones? Whoever wins that will be higher on our list. So please
I
vote.
like it.
There you go.
Right on. Anyway, that's it for our podcast today. Make sure you guys like this video, subscribe to the Comic Collectors Guild channel on YouTube, and also follow the Guild on Instagram. If you guys want to apply for the Guild, make sure you click the link in their bio and fill out the application. Anyway, that's it. This is Squad 224 signing off. Thank you guys for joining me today.
Peace.